Welcome to this explainer, everyone. You know, you are right at that perfect age where you're starting to make some really big, super important decisions. So today, we're diving straight into a completely fascinating part of the biblical text, specifically, the book of Proverbs, chapter 21. Think of this explainer as your ultimate cheat sheet for making great choices. We're going to look closely at these verses together so we can figure out exactly how to navigate the road ahead. All right, let's jump right in.
So here's a question for you. Would you rather be known as foolish or wise? I mean, it seems like a total no-brainer, right? Obviously, everybody wants to be wise. But what the biblical text tells us is that being wise isn't just something you are, it's something you actually do. Literally, every single day, you're standing at a crossroads choosing between two totally different paths. One path is foolish, and the other is absolutely wise.
What is wisdom? Now, before we can actually walk down that right path, we really need to understand what being wise even means. It's not just about, acing a math quiz or a spelling test. The biblical text talks about the path of prudence. And hey, I know prudence is a big word, but it just means being careful and making smart, thoughtful choices for your future. Basically, it means looking ahead. A prudent person stops and thinks, wait, if I do this right now, what's going to happen tomorrow?
The biblical text is constantly comparing these two ways of living. On one side, you have the path of the wise, which is packed with prudence, being careful, and actually listening. And on the flip side, you've got the path of the foolish, the one that totally ignores warnings and just acts without thinking. So today, we're going to figure out exactly how to make absolutely sure you're walking on that wise path.
Section 2. Learning by listening.
So how do we actually gather up all this wisdom? Well, according to verse 11, it all starts with our ears and our attention. The biblical text talks about two types of people, a mocker and the simple. A mocker is basically someone who makes fun of the rules. They think they know absolutely everything, and they just completely ignore good advice. But the simple? That doesn't mean they aren't smart. Not at all. It just means they're young. They're like a blank slate, still figuring out how the world works. And the text tells us that when a mocker gets punished for breaking the rules, the simple gain wisdom just by watching and learning from those exact mistakes.
So how do you get smart without having to make every single mistake yourself? It's actually pretty easy. Step 1, pay attention to the wise. That means listening to your parents, your teachers, and the people who've already walked the wise path. Step 2, get knowledge. Honestly, just by paying attention to them, you gather up all this knowledge that will protect you later. It is literally like taking notes on how to beat a really hard video game from someone who's already won it. Section 3, caring for others. You see, being wise isn't just about protecting yourself. It's also about how you treat the people around you. Caring for others is a massive part of the wise path. So think about this for a second. What happens when we completely ignore others who ask for help? Like maybe someone at school drops all their books, or a friend is feeling super left out, and we just look the other way. Well, the biblical text has a really strong warning about exactly this in verse 13. It says, "Whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will also cry out and not be answered." Wow, that is a pretty powerful reminder about empathy, right? If we walk that foolish path and just ignore people who need our help, we might find ourselves in a tough spot where we need a hand and nobody is there for us. A truly wise person always keeps their ears open to help out those in need. The text actually gives us a brilliant strategy for empathy in verse 14, too. It says that a gift given in secret soothes anger. So imagine two friends are having just a massive argument. Sometimes a super small, quiet act of kindness, like, letting them go first in a game, or quietly handing them a piece of gum without making a huge deal out of it, can completely stop the argument and bring peace. Wisdom is knowing exactly how to calm things down. And what happens when things are made fair? Well, verse 15 tells us that when justice is done, when fair rules are actually followed, it brings total joy to the righteous, the people doing the right thing. But for evildoers, it brings terror. It's just like playing a game with your friends, Fair rules make the good players super happy, but they definitely scare the people who were secretly planning to cheat. Section 4, making smart choices. All right, now the biblical text gets really practical. It talks about how we manage our behavior and the things we love the absolute most. The text warns us about loving certain things a little too much. Verse 17 specifically mentions loving pleasure, wine, and olive oil. Now, back in the time the biblical text was written, wine and olive oil were signs of fancy, expensive partying. For you today, this might mean loving constant playtime, playing video games all day, or spending your entire allowance on expensive toys. The text warns that if you only ever care about partying and treating yourself, and you completely ignore your chores or your work, you're going to end up with nothing. You will actually become poor.
Verse 20 gives us this really brilliant comparison.
It says the wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. Okay, think of it like Halloween candy. A foolish person grabs their whole bag of candy, eats the entire thing in one single night, gets a massive stomach ache, and boom, they have absolutely zero candy left for November. But a wise person? They practice prudence. They save a little bit, have a couple of pieces at a time, and their candy lasts for weeks. So which one would you rather be?
I always love this next one from verse 19. It says, better to live in a desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife. For kids, think of it kind of like this. It is way, way better to sit all by yourself in a totally quiet, boring room than to be stuck in a super fun room with a sibling who is just constantly picking fights, arguing, and complaining. Wisdom means valuing peace. It means being the kind of person who brings peace to your house, not arguments.
Section 5. The righteous one watches.
Up until now, we've basically just talked about our own choices. But the biblical text reminds us that we are definitely not alone in this journey. Verse 12 says, "The righteous one takes note of the house of the wicked and brings the wicked to ruin." Now, it is extremely important to understand that the righteous one being talked about right here is God. He is always watching. He pays really close attention to everything that's happening. And when people choose that foolish, wicked path, he takes note of it and he ensures that fairness and justice will ultimately win out. You simply can't hide foolish actions from him.
And because God is watching, verse 18 tells us that the wicked become a ransom for the righteous. This essentially means that ultimately God protects those who follow him and walk the upright, wise path. When trouble comes knocking, he makes absolutely sure that the people who have chosen to do the right thing are kept safe and completely secure.
Section 6. Choosing your path.
So, we've looked at all the evidence in this explainer, and now it's time for our final takeaway. Verse 16 gives us a very serious reminder. It says, "Whoever strays from the path of prudence comes to rest in the company of the dead." I know, that sounds mysterious and maybe even a little bit scary, but it's meant to be a really strict warning. If you wander away from making smart, careful choices, if you ignore your parents, treat other people badly, and just gulp down everything you have, that path only leads to ruin and sadness. It is literally a dead-end road. So what does this all mean for you? Which path are you going to choose to walk today? Are you going to be the simple learner who gains knowledge, saves their candy, and brings peace to their friends? Or will you walk the foolish path? The wisdom of the biblical text is right there in your hands, ready to guide you. The choice is totally yours. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope you make the wise choice today.